Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. And welcome, Jamila. I'm going to press live on Instagram quickly and then also introduce our topic for today whilst we hoping our guests will arrive. The topic today is This All There Is? And I think it's quite a provocative question, whether or not our guest joins us today or not. So welcome, Jamila.
Thank you, Anissa. Always lovely to see you. I think we don't see enough of each other each week. Once a week on a Friday is not nearly enough. But anyway, having said that, it's lovely seeing you and welcome to all of our listeners. It's another exciting hour with possibly our guest if she does arrive, but if not, you and I will just continue because this is a topic that I think goes through everyone's minds. Is this
Yeah,
really
yeah.
all there is to it? And we constantly ask ourselves these questions. And I think that, we need to take cognizance and concentrate and just become a little bit aware of the areas in our own lives where we have settled for less than what our souls truly desire, and to realize that it's never ever too late to make a difference, to make that change, and to step into what's really possible for you.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I was just about to announce that we had a challenge with LinkedIn, but I see StreamYard has just sent another message. So for those that have been waiting for us to join, it was an error on LinkedIn side. Hope to see you all here today. Those that are joining us as usual from Instagram and YouTube, please, we always prefer you make this as engaging and interactive as you always do. I need to put my mobile data off so that no calls come through and interrupt our stream. But yes, and that question, I don't believe we ask it once. I feel we almost ask it regularly as we go through different phases in our life. And I find myself asking that quite frequently because I am the type of person that don't like to stay stagnant with something for too long. And if I feel like I'm doing something with my eyes closed, as an example, then I ask myself, where's the challenge? How am I actually taking things up a notch or to the next level? And it's not like I'm saying I want it to be, I'm always needing to chase something, but
Mm.
how am I impacting even more far reaching than what I already am? Who haven't I touched? What is it that I need to learn and develop and grow in that's going to take me to that next level? So I don't know what it is for you, but a constant question is there whether
Yeah,
this is all there is.
for sure, Anissa. And I think that when we move through each version of ourselves, it comes with those different questions. And it, like you said, it's about touching other people's lives, but also giving yourself that opportunity to be touched by those who are meant to be in your space at that time, and from whom we are going to be getting great learnings and great teachings, in order for us to elevate to a higher self or a higher version of who we are, because that's literally what it's about, isn't it? It's about being the best person that you can be for yourself. And I think this is an invitation, or this episode is an invitation, to dream bigger, to raise our vibrations, and, like I said earlier, to step into the into what's possible for you at each different stage in our lives. We're constantly changing, and I feel now more than ever at version 5.3, of when you reach, and you'll see this when you get to version 5.5. um, I thought that version 4 was that turning point, because you're constantly changing, but you also like you step into this phase of becoming
Yeah.
who you truly are. But
You
in
wrote a
becoming,
beautiful post, I think, this
right,
week on this.
yes, yes, correct, yeah. But in
Yeah, this is
becoming who
beautiful.
you need to accept all the different aspects of who you are. And what I
Mm.
love about this phase in your life is that you question, but you question constructively, and you accept and you allow for so many different new experiences to come in, and for so many different perspectives that we can think about and that are being introduced into our space. So yes, I agree with people that your 20s and your 30s are amazing and it's fun. But I also feel like it's a space where you have a lot of doubt. You're
Yes.
questioning from that space, and when you start to enter that 4 point and 5 point phase and version of who you are and beyond, I suppose, you really truly are more secure, more confident, more forgiving towards yourself, and just very, very, I think everything that you experience and you question is from a very constructive foundation.
I like that. I'm going to share something that you may laugh about, but I picked up my son and I've been kind of at, loggerheads with all the kids because they're not doing what they're supposed to. And, mommy's dealing with the big things. So make sure the little things get taken care of. So one of his
Yeah.
friends comes to the car right now and says, I believe you're in a bad mood. So I said, did my son say why I'm in a bad mood with him? But the reason why I'm sharing that part is that we can be unapologetically, firm and assertive in this stage. And I must admit, I don't feel like I owe anyone an answer or a response or an explanation when
Yeah.
I feel a certain way anymore. Whereas before, in my version threes, it was still very top of mind for me. So I quite like this stage that, and you said it so beautifully, we will constructively question and give ourselves feedback in the moment because your level of self awareness is so much more heightened, or at least it should be, making the assumption that it is for everyone, but it might not be. But I do feel that, if I look at what we said we were going to talk about here, it's about truly living your best life, manifesting your dreams and thriving. And if you don't ask that question all the time, it means you stay stagnant. You stay where you were before. And I
Mm.
just want to compliment you again. Damn, girl, version 5.3 on you looks so good. I do pray and hope that my version 5.0 is at least going to look the part still.
Oh,
Okay. So you're an
I
example
I
for us.
know you will. I know you will for sure. But thank you so much, Anissa. I think the difference between our version threes and our version fours and fives and beyond is that not only is uh, at this stage, our self awareness is at an all time high, but our self acceptance is as well.
Mm,
And
mm,
that's why you don't obsess on what other people are thinking about you.
yes,
What's important is what you think of yourself. What's important to you is your self prioritization. And I think we
absolutely.
battle with that earlier on in life because we want to be so accepted. We so want to be a part of, um, because we're still searching and finding
Mm,
out, who we're becoming. And I think that when you reach these more mature versions of yourself, you have an understanding of who I am. And I know I've said that I don't like really asking that question, but on that basis, on that foundation,
mm.
um, you can ask, who am I becoming, from a space of confidence, self confidence, and self worth.
Yes, I just want to welcome those that are on. I have tried to type along the way. We've got some new people. I think Amani Razak, welcome to our live stream on Instagram. And then I think I've seen Angela Wall official a few times before, and nice to see you there, Marissa. And then Ashif, thank you for always being here. I reserve the right to evolve. What I think and feel today is subject to revision tomorrow. Ashif always never disappoints with his wisdom, and it always helps us to lead on to further conversation around that. Let's unpack that, Jamila. I like that. I reserve the right to evolve. What I think and feel today is subject to revision tomorrow.
I love that. I love that. And
Mm,
that's just, that just depicts exactly what we've been saying is that you don't have to be held hostage to who you were yesterday or a decade ago because we are constantly evolving as people, and rightfully so, because like you say, we're
mm,
not static creatures, right? So I might gain a whole lot of different experiences in a span of however long it can be. It doesn't matter how, but what's important is that the learnings that I get from it should not um, it should not deprive me of
mm.
evolving and changing, or be seen in a certain way, or being held hostage to be seen as a particular um, type of person. So I think that the ones who are constantly changing and who are brave enough to allow that to shine are the
Mm.
ones who are learning, the ones who are so much in touch with themselves and allowing themselves to raise the vibration.
Yeah, I was just thinking about something as you said that, and as I'm reading Ashif's comments over and over, and it it also lets us lose people along the way.
Mm,
Because as we're evolving and becoming that newer version of ourselves, I find that that vibrational frequency with some people is no longer aligned.
mm,
And until I want to say cut the cord, and it may sound harsh, but sometimes we try and stay in spaces that we were previously. But when we're asking, this is like an existential question, right? Is this all there is? It's where you're really starting to look at life and saying, well, what is that legacy that I want to cultivate? Who do I want to be with on this journey alongside me? Because when you get to the version fours and fives, you've kind of reached the halfway mark potentially, if God wills that you will have a longer life or double that time. And the
mm,
reality is you want to live it meaningfully. You
mm,
don't want to live it in either toxicity or people that, unfortunately, I had a conversation earlier also when people give negative feedback or harsh feedback, or they watch from the sidelines as you wanting to evolve or reserve this right to evolve. And then you have things like the evil eye that is prevalent.
mm.
So I often ask myself the question around, is this all there is in terms of the relationships, and what's more to the type of relationship that I aspire to have alongside me until I go to my grave, so to
Mm.
speak.
Anissa, we grow up and we believe that we fit into these little boxes, right?
Yes.
Or these little silos. But that's not the case at all. We are meant to be changing, constantly changing. And
Yeah.
when that change comes from within us, it's going to affect our external as well. So, like you said, yes, you will. This automatic filter comes into place, and
Yes.
it it allows you to shed those who are not meant to be in your space. And I just
Mm.
like to take this opportunity to welcome Amani. She is one of my very, very dear little friends. And I say little because she's still a version 2 of
Oh,
herself, but
wow.
comes with great, great maturity and a wealth of knowledge. And I think she will also relate to this, is that you tend to shed the people that are not meant to be in your space. And you have to accept that with grace, because this
Mm.
is your journey. This is the process that you have to go through. And I look at her young age, and I think about how aware that the younger generation is today. And it really makes me so happy because I just think about the potential of where they would one day be as they approach and enter into version 3, 4, 5 of themselves. So it just gives me so much of hope and positivity to know that you have these younger people who are so in touch with themselves and so in
Mhm.
touch with alignment and with self um, teaching and exploring and growth. Um, so, yeah, it just makes me feel very hopeful of what the future does hold in store for our kids, Anissa, because
No,
this is what,
I mean, when you said she's in a version, I was like, wow. It's,
yeah.
I would have thought today's audience would be, version end of the threes and maybe into the fours and fives, because this is the type of question we only ask then. So, well done to you, Amani, because it means that you are quite intuitive, quite self-aware. Um, I suppose if I had to also be bold without knowing you, to say that you are curious to discover and rediscover, and that's what this question for me is all about, is that we don't stay like in the same cycle of life. We're curious to find out what else is there to discover and
Mm,
find the wonderment and the awe that still exists there, because most times we almost feel like we're in this jail of, okay, this is my life, this is the career path that I've taken, I married this person or I got divorced from that person, okay, so this is probably how my life needs to be. But it's that curiosity factor and staying in wonderment where we see possibility of what else could be endless, of, living a different version of ourselves. Is it sometimes scary? Let's talk about that for a moment. Hell yeah. Wouldn't you say?
sure, absolutely. I mean, a change is always scary, isn't it?
Yes.
And I think that we have been accustomed as we grow up to believe that change is always going to be scary. We're hesitant to embrace it. But I like what you said about, is this it for us? That can be
Hmm.
seen in a positive and a negative light. And when you first read it,
True.
it might have, overbearing connotations of negativity, but
Mhm,
as
mhm.
you said, Anissa, if you look at it from a perspective of awe and curiosity and amazement, it can be a stepping stone into something that is wondrous and enlightening and um, so fulfilling for yourself. So there's two ways of looking at it. Um, and I think that it's almost always such a blessing if we look at it from the positive perspective and not to look at it from a space of fear. Change can be amazing, it can be fulfilling, it can be life changing, which are
Yes.
all positives. So I think that's how we need to embrace it as well. And like you said, you expect the later versions to be asking or pondering about these questions. But when I think about the younger versions, um, they don't live from a space of fear or lack.
No.
They are quite adventurous. They are quite hungry to know what more is out there and to experience it and to be open to that experience um, by being brave.
Mm.
And I think that's what we all need to do is be brave enough and bold enough to just attempt something new.
Yes. Yeah, I just want to read his last comment. Yes, when things change inside us, things change around us. And I want to kind of build on that, Ashif, because just as Jamila has said now, depending on your lens of the world, you can either see this, is there more to life, as a negative or positive. And what comes to mind for me is that, what's his name, that amazing psychiatrist, Gabo Mate. I think it was him that said you'll have, it might be him or another one, but I seem to think it's him. that two people, siblings growing up in the same home, and
Mm.
their lens of what those experiences were and how they interpreted were very different. But they
Yeah.
were raised by the same mom and the same dad. And the reality they've seen is based on how they viewed the world. So that question, if you don't have it from a place of abundance and possibility, it can actually weigh you down. So
Mm.
you've raised a valid point, Jamila, because if you're going to not see this as change is the opportunity to evolve, to become a better version,
Mm.
and I'll use my daughter as an example. My daughter hates change. You know, any new thing that gets introduced to her, she almost gets like anxious and frustrated. And yet for me, I'm seeing change as well. Change is as good as a holiday, as the statement goes.
Yeah.
But we do need to be mindful also that others might not. So, how do we support people in actually getting to see the possibility of change?
Mm. Anissa, I just want to make a point. It was indeed Gabor Mate who did say that.
Mm,
And I think just taking from your own personal experience,
yeah.
who you are as a parent, okay, and this is typical of what we're speaking about. When you had your first child, you were a different Anissa, a different version of Anissa, and then came along. So your child would have experiences based on who you were at
Hmm.
that time, on the parent that you were as well at that time. Then came along your second, and Anissa was not the same as her version one.
No.
Her son knew. She was different again. So this
Yes.
second child will have a different version of the reality of what your life was like, your family life was. And subsequently,
True.
the third one, makes sense that again, Anissa has changed. So who she is to the parent to this child will be
Mm,
completely different to how you brought up your first child. So of course their perspectives are going to be different. Their memories are going
yes.
to be different. They'll remember a single incident from three different lenses. Um, and not to
True.
say that either one of them was wrong or right, but I think that it was exactly what it is, their perspective of it. And then you
Very
have a
true.
completely different perspective as well. So, in that sense, when we look at change, it's it's the natural progression of how we should evolve as people.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think as parents, we need to be really aware of this, and we need to be very aware of relating this to our children so that their perspective changes, so that one day in the future when they're recalling something, they don't say, did you actually grow up in the same household as me? That actually didn't happen. Were you sitting
Mm.
there when this conversation was had? So we need to inform and educate our children of the changes that are happening within us as well. And I think that these conversations are not had enough. Um,
Couldn't
we
agree
we
more.
yeah, we expect ourselves, or we hold ourselves to this role as parents, and we don't allow ourselves to be seen as being able to change. We are meant
Mm,
to hold a certain standard irrespective of what we're going through in our lives, and that's the way we're meant to be seen by our children. Those are the
mm.
actions, those are our values, our morals, whatever it is that we hold on to. But we should be more human about it when we are engaging and interacting with our children, so that they know that their parents are not just role models, but actual human beings as well.
On the point of role models, Amani says here, and I want to respond to the kids' things afterwards. Amani says the biggest blessing is the privilege of having role models who help shape the life you want to live.
Yeah.
To your point, right?
See?
So you've
Yeah.
just shared the wisdom of being human, and she's acknowledging it without even realizing. I mean, that comment was there before you started
Yeah.
talking.
Mhm.
So whether or not, I think Amani has that intuitive wisdom around it. I think it is important to stay authentic. And I always wear my heart on my sleeve with my kids. That's why my son could say earlier on, my mother's in a bad mood. But it wasn't about being in a bad mood, it's about disappointment. And I'm saying to him, in a bad mood. I'm actually really disappointed. I don't want to be talking and saying the same thing for the little things. And I know we're digressing from today's conversation, but it is that. Because if you say, is this all to life or is this all there is to it, then it's because you perpetuated certain cycles and behaviors. And I don't, I'm mindful around what you shared about the kids because I'll say to my older one, damn, you really got the raw end of the stick. But it's also your catalyst to be shaping you into a stronger version. Because remember, it's the first one. And so you have no idea what you're doing. And you're criticizing yourself, and others are criticizing you. And the relationship in your marriage takes a strain because now this is all new. And I suppose by the second version, you're a little bit more equipped, but still questioning. And because I had my third one in, I think I was 35 or 36, I was kind of the mid 30s or version threes. So there was a different maturity level. And if something drops on the floor, it doesn't matter, just give it to him again. Whereas the first one, you don't. But it is about remaining authentic and being in your truth because otherwise you're living a facade. And that in and of itself is another question around, is this all there is? Do I really
Mm.
need to pretend and show up in the world as pleasing everyone around me, whether it is draining me or depleting me? And so I have made it a conscious decision to say, well, no, this is not all there is. We've got to let our kids feel when times are tough, even. Because I know, certainly in my time of growing up, nobody wants to tell you times are tough. And so this question is even more pivotal when that question comes up to say, no, this is not all there is. It's actually impermanent, that this stays for a short space of time, but it's up to you to shift the narrative.
100%, 100%. And I think a big question here also, or a big issue, is judgment, right?
Yeah.
Because we are so hard on ourselves. We are so,
Mm,
so hard
mm,
on ourselves. We're unforgiving towards ourselves. And especially at that stage, you want to be the perfect mother. You want to be the perfect wife. You want to be the
mm,
perfect student or daughter or son or whatever the case may be. And you don't allow yourself the humanness of making mistakes and getting over it without placing so much of self-judgment on your on your being. And I
yeah.
think that the minute that we can give up that or acknowledge how much we judge ourselves and forgive ourselves for that, our whole perspective from an external view changes. Our
Mm,
view of people around us softens as well because we know what it's like to be judged and then we know what it's like to forgive ourselves. So we are more accepting of the people that are around us. um, and the ones that matter, right? The matter in being in our spaces. Um, we also tend to look at the experiences that we might once have come from and looked at ourselves as victims in those experiences where we blame others for the situation that we may have been in. We allow ourselves to forgive and to let go of those, to take the
yeah.
learnings from it, to take the lessons from it in order for it to improve and serve who we are today. So I
Mm,
think that judgment and the letting go of it, especially of self, is really critical in allowing us to move forward in our journey so that we may fully learn and experience where we are meant to be, how we are meant to be, and to embrace that change.
mm. I'm just looking at all the screens for the different comments and stuff, but something popped up in my mind on a client experience today. And I told her I'm going to steal it because I love this term that she used or insight that she gained. And she spoke about boundaried compassion. And I thought, what a lovely way to step in your power, hold your own, know your truth. And even if you are triggered or others are triggered by you stay within that boundary, but from a compassionate lens. I thought that that
Yes.
was something interesting for me, and it was something new because, once you hear boundaries, you see it as, okay, I'm putting up my boundaries, I'm respecting my space, I'm respecting my decisions. But when you bring a lens of compassion into it, you're saying, even if others don't see that your shift you're making in your life is for the greater good of whoever remains in your life, you can still have compassion for them. Are you there? Did I lose you? So whilst we're waiting for Jamila to return, any other comments from our guest on all the different platforms? I mean, how did you respond to that question around, is this all there is for yourself? Because the only time we start to ask that question is, I think it's also often time when we've gone through life-defining experiences. I know our guest was going to talk about, Eileen was going to talk about um, her own journey from decades long marriage and divorce and to navigating single life. So it might be even in that context, or you stayed in an organization for many years and you are so defined by that role that later on you ask, well, hold on, is this all there is to life? Or you're choosing between, staying within the corporate sector versus to go and pursue your dream. So it could be in the time this arises, I feel, is often when we're asking ourselves, is this enough? Do we really need to stay stuck in our environments? And that comes back to not a negative connotation to it, but really asking yourself, is this values and purpose aligned still? And that's when those life defining experiences prompts this question, I would say, and elevates us to take action, to move forward, to evolve. Are you back?
I'm back, Anissa. Sorry, my connectivity was I just had to move spaces.
Okay, go for it.
What
What are
did
your
I
thoughts
miss?
on the
What did I miss?
so what I
Sorry,
said is,
yeah.
this question we often ask or gets prompted when we're going through a life-defining experience. Like our guest was going to talk about being in a marriage for 35 years and eventually divorcing and now having to navigate single life. And it could be somebody that's in a role that they've stayed at one company all their life and they're so consumed by that identity. So I'm asking us to almost go into that direction a little bit, just to see
Mhm.
like what your thoughts are. Did you ask this question during times like that, the defining moments?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. I mean, and also I think you get to a point in your life where you realize that I've outgrown the space that I'm in. And by doing a lot of inner work and listening to what your body is saying to you, what your mind is saying to you, is very important in allowing you to make that decision to make the change. And inner work can be really very uncomfortable, Anissa. It's, as you know, it's not a walk in the park.
No.
It forces you to start to look at yourself from a space of criticism, but
Yes.
constructive criticism, not something that's going to break you down, but something that's going to allow you to break through to who you are, to the realities of what you are experiencing, and how to move forward and progress in allowing you to achieve and experience the life that you desire to have. So it's
Mm,
by no means a comfortable ride or a journey. It comes with a lot of bumps along the way. It comes with a lot of bruised egos,
yes.
and just being honest, really brutally honest with yourself. But all of it has a very positive outcome, because in allowing yourself to break through, it's like people say, you keep on knocking at a closed door,
Mm,
without having the consciousness of the huge big open door that's behind you, because you're so focused on looking at that one door, because that's what you're used to. And because you
mm,
don't like change, or you have that fear of change, it doesn't allow you that peripheral vision to be able to see what else is out there, what's meant for you, what's going to allow you to grow and succeed and flourish in your life. And I think also, we're so focused on, like, I know people speak about purpose and that you have this one purpose in life, but I also
mm,
feel that that purpose is constantly changing as you change and evolve as a
mm.
person. And then I feel also that, we focus on purpose so much on how serious this is, the seriousness of it, that we forget about fun. We forget about the role that fun and lightheartedness and creativity plays in our life. And I think that that's what we need to embrace as well, and we need to prioritize, um, because this also allows you to embody the fullness of who you are as an individual, and allow you to be that playful, creative, fun, purpose driven, ambitious, motivated, inspired being that you are naturally created as.
You know what I like what you're saying there is that it's again, who are you becoming and who are you being, rather than what do you want to do or achieve. And there's such a big difference there. And it comes back to
Yeah.
staying in the present moment and relishing this moment here and now. Because this question, now that we are unpacking it in this way, can also take us into staying stuck in the wounds of the past, because, or potentially even the fears of the future. As we said, change creates a little bit of fear and doubt. But it is important to have fun along the way, and we do forget that because we. I love that you've raised
Mm,
something that is so norm, that you must know your values, you must know your purpose, you must have a purpose and a mission statement and a vision statement, and then some. But if we're
yeah.
talking about the evolution of ourselves and the upgraded version of ourselves, how often do we revisit it? So, whilst I don't necessarily think your purpose changes drastically, you can have multiple purposes. And how often are you connected to that version of you? So, you might have a version that um, you shift between a career, and you say, well, hold on, career is no longer for me. It doesn't serve me, and it doesn't serve the greater good of what my values are. But it doesn't mean that you don't continue doing certain things that you did in that career. You may just reuse it in a different context. So that's why we must be very
Mm,
discerning around what part of our purpose stays the same versus what just needs to be tweaked because of the context.
mm.
That's another thought to consider.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes, like, I look at my past, in media and marketing, and
Yes.
after venturing out and seeing what else is out there, and I came across the life coaching and the NLP, and it really really invigorated me. The interest was just on a different level. I really enjoyed it. I had fun with it. And it led me to believe that this is what it is. This is what I'm meant to be doing.
Mm,
um, and not to say that what I had been doing before was just all doom and gloom and it was just something that I had to put myself through. It comes with its fun as well. It comes with the moments of, just pure exhilaration from having sold. a sponsorship package, or it comes from having fun at an event that you have put together. So and that's what life is about. I think it's about the energy that we put into something, Anissa.
Mm.
Um, and sometimes we might not have a lot of it. We might expend a little bit of energy on it. And sometimes we might be in a space where we would just want to, put all of our energy into it.
Yes.
So I think as you mature and as you experience life, this is what happens, is that we have varying levels of energy towards the experiences that we are having, the jobs that we are implementing for ourselves, um, and the
Mm.
relationships that we're having. Um, and
Yeah.
like we say again and again, neither one is good nor bad, or it's just the experiences that we have, and it's our responsibility to understand this. It's our responsibility to understand and to accept and to focus on where our energy lies, or our maximum energy lies. And in doing that, that's how we create a life that we want to live, that we enjoy living.
So I like the nugget there for me that I take away from what you said is we mustn't put ourselves into these little boxes. And
Mm,
we need to look outside the box, around the box, at the bottom of the box for that matter, because there's just so much to discover. And the other nugget I get from you is that sometimes this question could be answered by just discovering the little things, like you said, selling a sponsorship back. And I smiled with that because I just finished my event recently, and it's such a feeling of elation because the event is one part of it, but the impact of what you want to deliver that at that event is more important. I see another comment that hasn't come through on StreamYard, but it's here on LinkedIn from Ashif again. Some doors only open from the inside. Hashtag self-trust. Hashtag inner action. And I don't know if he's added another one. No. So I do feel that maybe this question doesn't need to be as big as it appears to be. But if we break it down to bite-sized chunks, we would be, I suppose, surprised, pleasantly surprised to see what is possible with
mm,
responding to this question, but from a different vantage point. So I absolutely enjoyed how you reminded us to celebrate the little milestones, the steps in between, and the pursuit towards. And it may not be the greater, bigger, audacious goals or endeavors, but who have I made smile today? Who have I allowed
mm,
to feel happy and content within themselves today? How have I held space for somebody today? How have I reached out to just be kind to someone? Because that, I think, is the bigger answer to this question, is that who am I becoming is exactly that. Coming back to your
yeah.
thing again, Jamila, you're on fire today because these are your insights that I'm simply
No, but
just capitalizing and building on. And it's true, it does come back to that.
yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head. It's about the bite-sized chunks, right?
Yes,
And taking one small bit at a time, because this is the foundation of our transformative journey, isn't it? Is to
yes.
break it down into little bits and pieces that we can digest, that we can encounter, that we can dissect and try to to move beyond. It's not, like you say, about the huge big goals that we have in our mind. Yes, ultimately we're working towards something, but there's a way in which we should um, you know attempt at doing it,
Mhm.
attempt at succeeding at it, and that's to do one small thing at a time, which makes a huge difference ultimately. And I think when you do that, you learn to appreciate the smaller things in life as well, the
Mm, mm,
smaller successes, allows us to just be more mindful, not to be so driven, but to take the time to appreciate the little things in life. And that is success in itself. And those in that way, we don't really see that change as that daunting change.
Yeah,
Um,
it's so interesting because this week I did a talk on resilience at an event, resilience and growth. And I mean, we've captioned this shifting from grudge to grit, and grit is really that resilience factor. But if we, what we're discussing here now is it's not about being relentless and saying at every cost and whatever you need to do, you are going to execute on goal A or B or C or D, because I actually think that's where we get stuck and we end up stumbling along the way because we put ourselves into a persona of how we are meant to show up in those moments. But
mhm.
we all have these special, unique gifts and talents and beingness, in other words, our essence. And so if we can remain in that essence, the question then becomes not such a big question, does it?
No,
Am I right
absolutely.
or am I wrong? Am I going off on a tangent here?
No. You're
Because I'm
absolutely right.
yeah, like it's like, is this really a big question then? Because if you are living in that beingness, in that divine essence, you just need to be finding new things to bring that wonderment and awe and replicate that beingness of you.
Yeah. No, and the thing is, Anissa, we're not like statues. We are not statues.
No.
Okay, we're not statues. We filled with muscle and ligaments and blood that's running through us, filled with made up mostly of water. We are not carved in stone. Okay, we get to be fluid. We get to be dynamic. Our lives are filled with movement, with energies, with different frequencies and vibrations, and life is movement, and so are we. That's
Yeah.
what we are. So to define ourselves in rigid terms is to deny ourselves of that constant transformation that flows through us and flows within us, right?
Yeah.
Who we are yesterday is not who we are today, because we are always becoming, constantly changing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we need to embrace about ourselves, and to look at ourselves as this energy which changes, which morphs, which is constantly moving all the time.
Mm.
And if we look at ourselves from this perspective, when we get to that point of shedding people, it's not that difficult to do any longer, because we
Sure.
know that this is our journey. This is the movement that we are meant to flow through and,
Yeah.
within. Um, and every time that we shed, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a person, whether it's a limiting belief, whether it's some sort of a stereotype, a typical label that we attach to ourselves.
Mm. Mm.
It's each day that we grow with courage, with bravery, with wisdom, um, and which allows us to accept that bolder truth about ourselves.
Mm. Mm. I'm just reading back again on, one of the parts that we wrote in the topic for today around if you've ever felt stuck, trapped, or powerless in your current situation. This was the reason why we said this conversation would be for you. And it is that when you give away power, you are not in your sovereign being state either. And that reality makes you feel like you're in a struggle, in a fight, flight, freeze mode, or even fawn mode, right? And
Yeah,
what you're saying is when you're not fighting the current and you remain in your zone of genius or in your flow state, this question becomes one of empowering. The positioning is more from an empowering lens because you're saying, well, hold
correct.
on, here's the impact that I've been able to achieve being in this state of beingness, this flow state. What else might be possible? if I replicate this elsewhere in my life, or if I
Mm.
collaborate with other enlightened, awake, woken souls that are on a similar path. And I think that's for me another powerful positioning around this. How many people are asking the same question? How might we, join forces and collaborate on saying, well, hold on, if this is what the impact is and the legacy we want to cultivate in our lives, not leave behind. That's why I use the word cultivate now in this day. Who might be doing that with? In the same way that we have this segment, I believe, not for us, not for the vanity metrics, but as an invitation for others, right? And so this segment, I feel certainly, and I might be biased, and those that are listening in and have been our regular listening in. Today's episode 88, by the way. It's the
Yeah,
episode
nice.
of
Great.
abundance.
Yes. And infinity.
And infinity. And look at Ash's comment, daily fulfillments open wider pathways.
Mm.
How apt in the timing for that one to come through. But yeah,
Mm.
I think, what are your thoughts around, you know, creating ecosystems of people that are on that same vibrational frequency and saying, let's come together and ask this question from an empowering perspective in order to go and impact society, communities, our families, whoever it is we want to impact.
Yeah, and it's just about the communication and expressing how you're feeling. I mean, from one
Mhm.
conversation between you and I, Anissa, we're sitting on episode 88. We're sitting on episode Infinity and Abundance, right? Because of one conversation that we had, because we allowed each
Yeah.
other into each other's space and we were vulnerable enough to speak about what our experiences were, right? Without shame, without judgment for each other, and for ourselves. And look at what that's created. It's created this community for us.
Mhm.
And like you say, this is not about, saying that, oh yeah, we've got this podcast and we're on episode 88 and things like that. It's not about the vanity. It's
No.
about the relationships that we've created. It's about the people that um, this has allowed to touch our lives, and from doing so, we've we always say, and we always speak about this, say that what, this episode was meant for me, or this guest came on because there
Yes.
was a message that was meant to be sent to me. So we've allowed those spaces and those interconnections to be there and to be available for us, because we've tapped into it with that
Mhm.
mindset of creating a space that's not only going to help us, but going to help the people that are around us. And it goes back again into intention and setting the right intentions. And from those intentions, um, fruits are born, relationships are created, business ventures are, flourish. There's so much that has happened. You've been interviewed on other podcasts. I've been interviewed on other podcasts. People have come to us and reached out to us from across the other end of the world.
Yes.
We may never have had that opportunity, but just by allowing ourselves to pick up the phone and to speak to each other and be vulnerable, that this was created. So I
Mhm.
think also we just need to remove that doubt, remove that fear of
Limitation.
judgment. Yeah, that
Mhm.
fear of judgment, and of what people would say. Because when we allow ourselves to be open, obviously in the right spaces and around the right energies as well,
Yes.
we realize that we're not going through this life experiencing the challenges all by ourselves. It's something that
Mhm.
is common. It's a common experience that we all have. So open yourselves up, allow yourself to be vulnerable, share your experiences, because it might help someone, but more importantly, it might really help who you are and what you're going through.
Yeah, I like that, Ashif. One plus one equals three. Synergy, lift, push, pull. And what I want to add to this is that your friend on Amani, and just know that this doesn't have to just be the versions late threes and fours and fives, because we do certainly believe, and we've had experience and engagement on the segment where it was just about anybody that was at that same vibrational frequency. And age
Mm.
is just but a number, I feel, because that inner knowingness and that inner wisdom and that mutual compassion and empathy, love and kindness that we all are innately born with. I think that's the secret ingredient to
Yeah.
bring to life, impact and change and transformation within this big question, because it is a big question. But if you really break it down simply, as we said here, this lady was going to talk about, Eileen was going to talk about the law of attraction and manifesting. It's very easy to manifest when the vibrational frequency and energy is aligned for that, because
Yeah.
you will naturally attract people that are on that same frequency and that want to solve the same problems and may have the same aspirations. So, agreed with Jamila saying, let's continue this conversation and get more people aligned and ask this question from a different vantage point, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we need to live in becoming, because
Mhm.
that is the freedom that we will
Yeah.
experience. Um, and to realize our limitless potential. Like you said, it's the gift that's given to us. It's innate. We're born with it, to
Yeah.
know that we are limitless, and we forget that along the way. But when we know that this limitless potential lies within us, it allows you to step forward in truth. It allows you to step forward in with courage and bravery, because your vibrations are at an all-time high when you understand that, when you understand how limitless you are. And that's where the manifestation starts to kick in without you even realizing it, because you have that self-belief, that belief in your own potential.
Mm, mm. Yeah, and it's a feeling of liberation, freedom,
Correct.
when you know that nobody and nothing is in your way, but actually you, your biggest protagonist. And if you just remember that you can fuel it in the right way and integrate it in the right way, whilst it is your inner protagonist, it serves when it needs to serve, right? It knows when it needs to act and behave a certain way. But when that ego does appear, you spoke about ego earlier on, and people always have a negative connotation to ego. I don't think ego's neither good, neither bad. It's actually a gift of awareness, a gift of insight, a gift of saying, well, hold on, where am I not in that truth? Where am I not being? Where am I not showing up as in my natural essence? And we know that, I mean, I'm a recovering people pleaser, and sometimes I still have it, that I need to just be mindful, like, okay, hold on. You're not that person anymore. You're not that version anymore. It's
Mm.
okay. It's safe. It's safe
Yeah.
to not be the pleaser all the time. It's safe not to be the hyperachiever. It's safe to just say, well, I don't have the answers to everything. I don't know how to respond to this question, even. And reach out and know that you have support and guides and mentors in other people, and that space holding is there. And I think
Mm.
that's what we've always tried to do with this segment, is that it's actually a space holding for others, as much as it's an invitation to shift out of that hustle mentality or scarcity, lack, and projection and judgment mentality into grace and compassion and gratitude. We really just want to hold space for people here so that you know that you're not alone. What is your
Mm.
closing out for today, Jamila? It goes too quickly every time, man.
I think, yeah, absolutely. I think that we need to release the need to define who we are. Just
Mm,
release that need, just release our insecurities, release that fear that we feel, release the smallness, the judgments. Just release all of that and stand in your becoming. Stand in your becoming, in your brilliance, um, in your magnificence, because that's how we were created, in that perfection. And of course, in your boundless capacity to transform. I think that's one of the
mm,
most key things, is that we need to acknowledge and accept this and live it, is our capacity to transform. We don't have to be bound by these stereotypes and the labels that are placed on us. It's
mm,
like you say, age is just a number. If I choose at this version 5.3 or version 6 to be a fitness instructor, or if I
mm.
choose that I want to go back and study law, that is my right to do. It's in my
Exactly.
capacity to do. And I should be able to choose that at any version that I'm experiencing at any point
Beautiful.
in my life. And I think that's the thing that allows us to become unstuck.
Mm.
And it
And
allows,
unstoppable.
exactly, unstoppable. Absolutely. And that's where the magic of life lies.
Mm. Oh, man. So, on that note, I suppose my closing comment would be um, just stay true to you, as I always say, and relish every moment of who you are and celebrate yourself and what you do bring already. And Jamila has said it so beautifully. Don't box, don't define yourself. We are not those labels. We are not our circumstances. We are not our stories. We are the recreated versions of those stories every single day of our lives. So I'll leave you with that on my part, and then we'll see you again, same time next week. And I'm almost inclined to invite Amani on as a guest sometime because I think that there's some wisdom there that she can certainly share with our audience. And yeah, we would welcome her. Thank you for everybody that did join on Instagram and then on YouTube. For those that haven't followed us on YouTube, or at least followed me on YouTube, please go and subscribe and like, because then you'd automatically get notice of these videos. And that's not me selling. It's just that we sometimes have people asking us for the recordings, and that's the best place to go get the recordings. Jamila, we do need to sort out our StreamYard
Yes,
sometime,
we do.
but that's
We
a story for
absolutely
another day. Take care. Ashif, thank you for your valuable comments and wisdom always. And we appreciate you. And have fun and have a good weekend. Same to you, Jamila.
Thank you, Anissa, and thank you to everyone who's watched. Amani, thank you. And as you said, as Anissa said, we will look forward to having you on as a guest. I think she's wise beyond her words, but she doesn't realize it as yet. But yeah, I think we also thank you, Ashif, for always being here and your support.
Mm.
And I'm missing Ronald, Anissa.
I've seen he's just commented on one of my other posts, but I think he's probably busy somewhere in the on the online ether.
I'm sure, but we look forward to having him on again next week or in the future, in the coming weeks. And have a fantastic weekend ahead. And
I
we'll
will.
chat soon, Anissa. I'll see you guys next
Get
week,
some
same
rest,
time.
my darling.
Okay.
Take care. Bye.